now that we let our brains take a break for a minute, we are going to get back at this lesson. The next part on our note sheet says to go back for numbers 5 through number 12. And what we're going to do is we're going to classify them by their term and degree. So this is kind of just remembering how would we label these based on what we've classified them as by their term and the degree. So remember, if we're classifying by term, that's how many terms. Remember, 1 term, monomial. 2 terms, binomial. 3 terms, trinomial. 4 terms or more, polynomial. And then by degree, if there are no variables at all, it's called a constant. If there is a degree of 1, that's linear. A degree, the highest degree of 2, it's called a quadratic. 3 is a cubic, and 4 is a quartic. So let's go. This should be pretty easy. Number 5, I have 2 terms, so that means good, binomial, and the biggest exponent here is a 1. So that means this is a linear binomial. Yeah, I always write the degree part first and then the number of terms. It doesn't really matter the order. If you write binomial first and then linear, that's just fine as well. Number 6, 2 terms, which is binomial. The biggest degree here is a 1, so this is also a linear binomial. All right, number 7, still a binomial. In fact, if you look at all of them, they're all binomials. Pretty cool. But on number 7, it's not linear anymore. We have a degree of 1 here, but that's not the biggest degree. My biggest degree is this 2. So what is it called when your degree is a 2? Quadratic. You will get to love that word. So it's a quadratic binomial. We'll look at number 8. Number 8 is also a quadratic binomial. Ooh, number 9. It's a little bit different. Still 2 terms, so we still have the binomial part. But my biggest degree here is now a 3. Does anybody remember? Hopefully you do. 3 is cubic. And if you don't, hopefully you flip back in your paper to remind yourself what the degree of 3 is. On number 10, we have a biggest degree of 4. So remember, think like 4 quarters in a dollar. So this is quartic. And it's still a binomial. So quartic binomial. Oh, number 11 should go back and be pretty easy for us. It's a degree of 1. So linear binomial. And number 12, the biggest exponent here is a 3. So this is a cubic binomial. All right, so now that we've done that, let's go ahead and move on to the next part here, which is now we're going to look at multiplying a monomial, so 1 term, with a trinomial, 3 terms. If we take 1 term and we multiply it to 3 terms, how many terms do we think we're going to end with on all of these? Well, let's think about what we did here. When we multiplied a binomial, 1 term, with 2 terms, we always ended up with binomials, 2 terms. So when we multiply a monomial with a trinomial, we should always be ending with a trinomial. So let's see if that works out well. So we've got the monomial 7, and we're going to multiply it by the trinomial 8x squared plus x plus 4. So 7 gets multiplied first by the 8x squared. So everybody should be thinking 7 times 8 and then an x squared. Okay. 56x squared. Okay. Now we're going to take that same 7 and multiply it by the positive x, that plus x. So 7, my coefficient here is an understood 1 if there's nothing written. So we get a positive 1 and an x. Now, you don't have to write that 1. I'm just writing it for the sake of seeing that there is a coefficient there. And then we have the 7 times a positive 4. So a positive 28. Notice how we have 3 terms left. Okay. I am going to show you something a little bit different on this next one. You actually could have used it for multiplying a monomial with a binomial as well. Okay. Sometimes we like to create a little box to help us be organized. It's not always necessary, but I just want you guys to see it in case you want to use it. If I'm going to take this negative 3 and we're going to multiply it by a trinomial, we're going to write that trinomial on top of my boxes. And then this is kind of just like a multiplication box. So to get inside the box, remember we're multiplying because that's what our parentheses here, sorry, that was a little messy arrow. That's what the parenthesis right here tells us to do, is multiply. So we're multiplying this negative 3 times the 5x to the 5th. So negative 15x to the 5th. And then we're multiplying this negative 3 here on the outside with the next term, which is a negative 5x squared. So a negative and a negative is now a positive 15x squared. And then the last term is the negative 3 times a positive 4, which is a negative 12, and then an x. So inside this box right here should be our answer. Now I'm going to bring it outside the box just for some clarity. I don't typically use a box for problems as simple as a monomial times something else, but later on in the year, you might want to come back to this method and we'll revisit it again. Okay, so let's look at 15. We are going to distribute this 2x to all pieces inside the parentheses. So the first piece we're going to multiply is 2 times 7, which is 14. And then the x times the x squared. So remember, this x has a 1 on it, even though we don't see it. So that means we now actually have x to the 3rd. Now we're going to multiply 2x times negative, don't lose that sign, 5x. So 2 times a negative 5 is a negative 10. X times x, add those exponents up, we get x squared. All right, 2x times negative 7, don't lose the negative. 2 times negative 7 is negative 14, and we have an x. All right, let's try 16. We got the 5x squared times 7x squared. So 5 times 7, 35, good. And x squared times x squared is x to the 4th. 5x squared times negative x. So remember, that's like having a negative 1 in front of there. So 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. X squared times x. Remember, we're increasing those exponents by adding them together. And we get x cubed. Then we're multiplying it by the last one. So 5x squared times negative 1. So we get a negative 5x squared. All right, take a second. I want you to pause the video and I want you to work 17 and 18. And when you come back and unpause the video, the answers are going to be on the board. All right, hopefully you tried them. Here are the answers. Make sure you did multiplication right. Remember, make sure you actually multiplied, not added or subtracted. All we did was multiply. The only things that got added were the exponents. Okay? Remember, we already said all of these answers should be trinomials. So if we're looking at this, we should see 3 things being added or subtracted as the answers. Okay? Notice the degree on them are different. Like number 13, the biggest degree is a 2. So that means it's a quadratic trinomial. But the degree on number 15 is a 3. So that means it's a cubic trinomial. Okay? So we're seeing these that are different. Now you've got some good examples to help you go through the practice, the homework. If you have questions, please let me know.